In this week's episode of The Buzz, we're telling you why Game of Thrones isn't just for nerds.
Even if you're not into fantasy series, you're going to like this show. It has an epic story, romance, and suspenseful twists. Everyone's talking about it. So we're going to tell you why it's so good, and if you're already a fan, we're going to get you geared up for season 2.
Hi, I'm Becky Kirsch.
And I'm Shannon Vestal.
We're the editors of Buzz Sugar by day and Game of Thrones fans by night.
So the show is coming back to HBO on April 1st. And this show does have sort of a fanboy reputation because it's based on a fantasy book series. And it might not sound like something you're into, but I'm hooked, Becky's hooked, and we've even noticed references to the show pop up on other TV shows.
It's from Game of Thrones. What do you think?
Sword, that is so Game of Thrones.
What is wrong with you today? Did they cancel Game of Thrones?
So I know before the show premiered, Becky, you were not that excited about it.
No, I wasn't. I mean, the trailers just didn't really hook me. It seemed kind of inaccessible because these books are so beloved. It has such a strong fan base, and I was worried that I was going to get, totally lost. But I figured I'd give it one episode, and a few things did go over my head, I'm not going to lie. But it ends on this extreme cliffhanger, and I just knew I was hooked from that point on.
Right, and you talked about it so much that whole season that I knew I didn't want to miss out, and I had to check it out too. And even though I was intimidated by it at first too, I ended up getting hooked as well. And I think we both found it watchable for a lot of reasons.
Well, that's an interesting thing about this is that fantasy fans can enjoy it, but I think people that are not into the fantasy genre can really love it too. I mean, the closest thing I can compare it to is Lord of the Rings. I think a lot of people see this and immediately think of Lord of the Rings. So if you love Lord of the Rings, you might like this too. I mean, it kind of has a similar feel. It's got the same medieval thing going on. But on the other hand, if you're turned off by Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of things that are different. There's no hobbits, there's not as many creatures. There are a lot more characters. It's really a story about, power between these different families and kind of how they're all trying to get it. And, as that breaks down throughout the characters, you just have all these really awesome different storylines.
And for me, I feel like it's like watching a movie every week. It has such high production value, these amazing sets, these really cool costumes, and I feel like anyone can really appreciate that kind of production value.
Definitely. I started reading the book after I watched the first season, and I have to say, I just get a lot more out of watching the show because it's so visually stunning. It's really great to, put faces to all these different characters because there is a lot going on, so that aspect of it is really cool.
And I'm not reading the book, nor do I really have plans to read the book because I'm not into the fantasy genre, and that's what's great. Even though I'm not into that kinds of book, I do really like this kind of show. Another thing that I really love about this show is the great characters, and I think that's a huge draw. They're really well developed. It's this huge ensemble, and the acting is also really great. And Peter Dinklage has already been recognized for his work with an Emmy.
It's true. I mean, the whole cast is phenomenal. Like we said, there's all these different families, so that means children and child actors, let's face it, are not always the most enjoyable actors, but on this show, they're all really great, and sometimes the kids are more interesting to me than the adults.
Yeah. Another great reason to watch this show, especially if you watch a lot of shows that you're tired of where there's not a lot happening and you have to wait for things to happen, that's not Game of Thrones. It's totally unpredictable, and you literally don't know who's going to get killed off next.
It's true. I feel like a real turning point in the fandom of this show happened when one of the main characters was axed, literally head chopped off, and people were so shocked because, that doesn't usually happen in the first season, so there was definitely big risks being taken here.
That's right, and I'm glad that you brought up the beheading because one of the things that really turned me off about this show, and I think a lot of people have the same problem, is that it's gory. And while it is true that it is very gory, I have to close my eyes a lot of the times. I still think the show is so good that it's worth it, and there's a lot of other elements to get caught up in that I think, like I said, really make it worth it to watch. And for me, one of those things is there's romance, so there's things for the ladies if that's what you're looking for.
Well, and what goes along with that is there's a lot of sex scenes.
There is a lot of sex scenes, and because it's on HBO, the show can really do anything, and they do anything, they do everything. It gets pretty graphic.
Which is maybe why you shouldn't watch it with your parents right away, which is a mistake that I made. It made for, an awkward post-show recap when we talked about it, I went to the bathroom a lot of times during that episode.
And not all of the intimacy on this show is so graphic. A little bit is very sweet. There's actually a relationship that I wasn't expecting to be into. You have this kind of girl power character, the heroine of the show, Daenerys Targaryen, and her warrior husband, Khal Drogo. And this is something started out as an arranged marriage, so it felt like a political storyline, and it ended up actually being a romantic storyline, which for me is the kind of things that I do want to watch. I want to watch those relationships play out on TV, so I really love that.
Me too, and that's not the only thing that's for the ladies. There are some good-looking dudes on this show. You've got Robb Stark and Jon Snow, who are half-brothers, and not bad to look at, I will say this.
No, I have the hugest crush on Jon Snow, not just because he's eye candy, but also because he's this great character who is an outsider, but he's also he has a lot of integrity, he's very loyal, and he can rock a fur like you wouldn't believe. And he's a master swordsman. I mean, who doesn't want that?
He's also one of the more loyal characters on this show, which is rare because the moral code on most people is a little ambiguous. But another great character is Peter Dinklage's character, Tyrion Lannister, who injects a little bit of humor into a show that's otherwise can be pretty dry.
That's right, he does. And I think not only is he funny, sometimes he kind of acts as the voice of the audience. Like there is a teenage villain character who it's so fun to hate him, but Tyrion is the one who slaps him around.
Literally slaps him in the face a bunch of times, which is how we all feel when we're watching the show.
Right, and it's one of those things that brings some lighter moments to Game of Thrones because I think a lot of people think that this is going to be a very dark, very dramatic show, which it is most of the time, but you should also know that it's not always that dark.
So you've got like sex, you've got humor, you've got eye candy, you've got people's heads falling off, but if you're still not convinced, another great thing, there's only 10 episodes of this show, so you can catch up super fast.
Right, and you still have time before season 2 starts, so you can catch up on the DVDs of season 1. I think you can get the reruns on HBO.
Yeah, and for everyone else, the season premiere is on April 1st, so hurry up, because winter's coming.
That's right. Thanks for watching The Buzz.